Welcome, kings and queens, to our session tonight. This is Free-Minded Academy classes. We are here to trigger a revolution that will liberate our people across the continent of Africa. We are mobilizing a movement that is global, that would see that we put pressure on all governments in all 195 jurisdictions globally to put the political pressure so that Africa is liberated. We dream of a united Africa with a single head of state. We dream of an Africa with a single reserve bank, a reserve currency, a single currency across the continent. We dream of an Africa that we have one passport. Whether you are here or in diaspora, you can freely come in and out of your land and the motherland because it is yours. It belongs to the sons and daughters of this continent. We want restoration of all the sons that were dispossessed of their land and their heritage. We see ourselves having organized ourselves and have a single military that defends the sovereignty of our people, and no more military that defends the interests of the wealthy. We want to kick those out, and they must go with all the neo-colonialists. We no longer want them in this era, so they must go. This is the stern message. This is the message that we want to echo across the globe. We're telling the globe we are done with neo-colonialism. We are done with the capital outflow of our resources and to finance and build other economies. We're done with that. So we want a capital inflow. Those who demand our assets, our labor, our natural resources must pay the full price for it. And we hold the right to beneficiate it and to ship it and transport it to them. So they pay full value for the finished product. It is our assets for our wealth. Now, we have a discussion tonight, King Kabbalah, our very own. You know, if we think of all of us here, King Kabbalah is the most wealthy because DRC Congo is a jewel of Africa. It's a heart of Africa. There is no land that is blessed on earth other than DRC Congo. You know, and I'm sure by now we will stop the outflow of his wealth and his assets, his inheritance, to be looted and enjoyed by other people other than himself. So we want to restore. We want to restore. So yes, we are having a conversation today. How do we build an asset base community development across the continent? So over to you, King Kabbalah. As per usual, he will go into the presentation, and then afterwards, let's think, let's make notes. We are encouraged to participate so that every view counts. And yes, we have taken a decision that we will censor our language so that it does not create hate speech to any race. We will refer to our enemies and enemies of Africa as an enemy. Who is the enemy of Africa? Is anyone who dispossesses us from our inheritance, our land, our economy, our minerals, our time through our labor. Anyone who undermines and oppresses us, who actually wants to keep oppressing us economically, is our enemy. We decree, and that's it. So that it's clear who is our enemy. So it doesn't matter then the color and the race of that person is an enemy. So it puts the neo-colonizers on the same boat as well. Just note. So over to you, King Kabbalah.
Thank you very much, King Fanelo, for giving me the floor. And thank you to everyone who is present here and those that will have to follow this discussion later on as we are recording it. So as usual, I will start by saying that peace and love freedom and decolonization to all African people, those of us who are here on the continent, those of us who are in the diaspora, and those of us who are still in the future. So we greet you with our revolutionary greetings by saying peace and love. Today, as already it has been announced, we are going to, all of us here, share ideas around the topic of asset-based community development. Now, before we even begin to share ideas about what this means and what is the viable method for Africa to move forward, I maybe just give you a background of the political maneuvering around the topic of development since 1945 or 1950, at the time of independence, right, in Africa. So if you know how the world is labeled today, you will surely know that we have a block of countries that are called developed countries, and the block of countries that are called underdeveloped countries, and those in the middle that are called developing countries. Well, we are not going to go into the history of this came to be. There's a lot to talk about that. But the least we can say is that since 1945, somewhere around there, because Africa mostly was qualified, most of countries in Africa were qualified as underdeveloped or third world countries. Now, the Western society, those ones who eventually destroyed Africa, gave themselves the privilege or the audacity to be giving now lessons to Africa on how to develop. Because that is the position that they've given themselves, the ones who put themselves as the example for other people to follow. So they came to Africans to tell us that you are barbarians, you are backwards, and we are going to help you to develop. Now, the first thing that they brought to Africa in terms of development was modernization. So simply modernization theory, as they developed it, means that Africa have to abandon our backwardness in terms of our tradition, our culture, especially they call this our tribes and all those kind of things, to abandon our village, because those are symbols of backwardness, to then approach the modernization, which is then the standards of life of the Western people, which then is what was called modernization. So in other words, we need to get rid of our attire. As we know, each nation in Africa will have a specific attire. Actually, when you start coming from the Congo, the DRC, actually from the Gabon, Congo up to here, South Africa and Zulu, you will see that the traditional attire is almost the same. The main symbol is the leopard skin. That's what you see our kings are wearing. All those things have significance, have symbols, have meanings in our tradition, our value system. So they said, okay, this backwardness, you need to abandon this. You need to wear suits, attire and all those things. That's symbol of modernization. You need to stop speaking Swahili, Zulu, Lingala, all this, or Ntui, Yoruba, all these languages, or Pedi, Swati. You need to converse in French, which is a symbol of modernization. You need to, to stop eating your traditional food the way that you eat it. You need to eat with a fork. So we know the story. These were theories of modernization that were given to Africa or lectured, to us, so that we can begin to emulate these things to gain what was called modernization. And we had to pay for that, right? And a few years down the line, around 1960s, Africa was even deep into problems, into conflicts, into crises and all those kind of things, right? And then they came again to us with other theories of development. They said, okay, now for you to develop, we need to bring you what is called now industrialization. So literally what happened through industrialization was that we go to America or to the IMF, to the World Bank, we borrow money. As soon as we come with the money in Africa, the IMF comes to us and say, you know what, for you to industrialize your country, we have companies who are then American companies who can come and help to build roads, to build industries, all the kind of stuff. So we take the same money that we borrowed to pay back with plus interest. We send it back to America where it came so that they can send us their technicians, their engineers to come and do whatever they called industrialization so that we can develop, right? So still didn't work because it plugged Africa into debt crisis that we are still, many countries are still really struggling to pay even until today, right? So after that, they came then with another theory that was now around 1980s of what they called neoliberal. So they said, okay, you know what, you guys, Africans, what you need to do now, because you failed in all the previous formulas that we gave you, now what you need to do now is to open your markets. Neoliberalism theories simply means that we need to remove restrictions. Actually, before even that, Africans had to gather in Nigeria in 1979 to discuss why all these formulas that we received didn't work. What can we do on our own to create our own conditions and move forward? So they discussed what has to be done, and out of that meeting in 1979 came out the blueprint that is known as the Lagos Plan for Development. And the Lagos Plan for Development was basically how African governments can take control over their resources, how they had to chip in money together and build agriculture, actually industrial agriculture in Africa to feed themselves and all those things, beautiful things. As soon as they came out of that meeting in 1989, there was another meeting in America, in Washington, that is called the Washington Consensus. Out of that meeting came out what is known as a structural adjustment program. Now, that was kind of a counterattack on what Africans achieved at the Lagos Plan of Development. So the structural adjustment programs is actually the precursor of what is known as neoliberal economic system, which means that when Africans decided that we need to take control of our resources, the structural adjustment programs stand to tell them that you need to liberalize your economy. That means you don't have to spend in investing in your economy. If you take money from IMF, you have to use that money only to buy, for example, only to buy the equipment, like the vehicles for your officials, state officials. You have to use this to pay, your state officials, but to invest it in economic means, in economic sectors that will have to produce benefits. You cannot do that. You cannot subsidize your agricultural sectors. You cannot subsidize your farmers. You cannot, you have to leave those sectors for European corporates to come and, invest there and work there. You don't have to raise taxes. All these are the things that go into the, what is called neoliberalism as an economic system. So that's even worsened the situation in Africa, whereby you had a lot of civil wars in Africa because there were a lot of crises, hunger, poverty, you name it, around the continent. In Congo, there was a civil war between the people from the center against the people from the south. There were a lot of things around that time, right? Up to 1992, 94, somewhere around there. Then they came again. They said, you know what? Now we bring you sustainable development. Now, all the previous years, whatever that the Western do, they don't care about the environment. If they come and they found the mountains and they discover that in these mountains, there are gold, there are platinums, they don't care. They just obliterates the whole mountains. They change the whole geography of the area. The mountains that have been there since our ancestors were around. I mean, since since the creations, the mountains have been there, have developed through through the course of time. Our ancestors never destroyed them, even though they were gold. So when these people come around, they just destroy everything because they want gold. When they come around and there's oil, even if that oil is in the forest, in the park, national reserve, they have to cut down the trees and all those kind of things. In fact, one of the things that they were talking about when they were telling us that we need to move toward modernization in order to develop, was when they came to Africa. Sometimes in our communities, they will see that an African will do some prayers before he chop down the trees. He will do some prayers before he kills animals. They said to our ancestors or to our fathers that these people are dark, these people are savage. They really make prayers before chopping down a tree, and the Western will just come and chop down the trees. Now, they are caught up with their own lack of understanding of universe and its laws. So they are the ones who are coming now to us, we bringing you sustainable development. So you Africans don't have to chop down too much of your trees. You don't have to use much of your resources, because the meaning of sustainable development, it means the development that allows that the use of natural resources is done in a sustainable way, so that the future generation can also find the same resources available for them and make use of them. So in other words, they are telling us you need to slow down on how you use your platinum, your gold, your oil, how you deal with your environment, because you need to leave it for the future generation. I'm always having a problem with that, even though it makes sense. But my problem is, currently, our diamonds, our golds don't belong to us. They belong to the enemies of Africa and the children, in a way that they are the ones who are profiting from these things. When you go to Congo, to the border between Congo and Zambia, for 1 hour, you spend 1 hour at that border, you may even collapse because of how many trucks full of copper, of cobalt are being, are moving out of the country. How many resources are being taken out of country, the woods and all these things, right? These things don't benefit us. You go to Congo, you find children are hungry, children are, they don't go to school because their parents can't afford the education. The same situation here in South Africa. South Africa used to be the center of gold and diamonds. Kimberley was, when you go to Kimberley, you see now there's walls there. There's dams, abandoned dams, because we've taken all the diamonds out of that town. And I used to tell some friends that, South Africa is no longer that South Africa that we know. The beautiful thing that is remaining in this country is only the queens in this country. But when you talk about mineral resources, they have been all taken out of this country. So it was in a joke anyway. So this is to say that we are having all these things that we say, and we are rich in mineral resources, but we don't profit from them. They are profiting the enemy's children. The enemy child goes to school today. He knows that after school, I have, my social assistance, I have a job, I have this and all those kind of things. And those plans are made basis on how the plunder of African resources is being done. But us, we are uncertain of what we are going to do when we finish schools, even though we have all these diamonds. So if today's resources and the use of resources today does not benefit us, what makes us believe that it will benefit our children, so that we have to stop using these golds so that our children can use them? For me, just like they're telling us to keep them for their own children, use them. So we shouldn't use it, because there's nothing that guarantees that our children will benefit from them if the system does not change. That's my bottom line. So that was just to tell you how this concept of development has evolved over time. So now there are now different thinkers, right? Including African thinkers who are coming up. Okay, wait a minute. Why do we have to sit down and to have these folks coming from Europe to lecture us on development. They design the planes and projects in Europe, in America, without even being in touch with the reality in Africa. And they come with those projects and planes in our villages, in our town, and they start implementing them. And most of them fell. And that's the reason why they fell, because they were not designed in connection with the reality that people are going through in Africa. So now the questions are, first of all, what has been keeping us alive? Even though we don't have money, we don't have industry, we don't have all these things that the Westerners are having. We don't have these, sophisticated medical facilities, but we have been surviving. When you go to our villages, you see people who have been living for about 80 years, 90 years. Some of them even go above 100 years. So the question is, what has been keeping us alive? What has been maintaining us? What has actually been helping us to resist diseases, to survive all kind of tactics to decimate us as people? There's something truly that we have that we haven't been able to properly utilize, but we are using it subconsciously. That's where comes the concept of asset-based community development. It means before you expect some folks from America, from Europe, from England to come and say, we are coming to help you to develop. Why can't you use the same thing that has been helping you to survive all the periods, to use it to then trigger your own development? You see, for example, when you go into our townships, when you go into our villages, there's no employment. Like, for example, in the Congo, there's 90% unemployment, right? Like 90% of people are not formally employed. So they have to do some hustle here and there. They have to own businesses in order to survive. So, but even though there's 90% of unemployment, when you go to Kinshasa, capital, I'm telling you, one of the flourishing industry there is beer industry, is brews. Alcohol is consumed there on daily basis. The music is rocking there. There are towns, there are cities like Gombe, the most richest city in Kinshasa, where people are just enjoying themselves. But yet we cry of unemployment, we cry of poverty, all these things. So what has been making this alcohol business so flourishing? It means it's something that we have, an asset that we have that is maintaining us. So if we just learn on how to properly utilize these little assets that we have, it can be a game change for us in our communities, in our provinces, and in Africa as a whole. The whole community of African people. You see, even here in South Africa is the same. When you go to township in South Africa, alcohol is consumed every day, but yet those people, they don't have a job. Why? Because throughout all these systems that the Westerners have got us through, one thing that we have learned and internalized is personal interest, is personal survival or personal goals, which is not bad. But when you have personal interest above collective interest, you will end up in a situation where you have a community that is apparently poor, but alcohol, cigarette, things like that are really consumed, and there are billions of US dollars taken out of that community. But yet people cry that they are hungry, they are poor. Why? Simply because the little money that people have is mostly used for personal interest. It's not used to build collective structures or institutions that can help all of them together. For example, if you have 100 rands here in South Africa, it's a little money. I mean, you can finish it in 1 minute. You can buy a 6-pack of beers, is gone. You can buy cigarettes, you can buy, you can buy bread. Actually, bread used to be 15 rands. Now you're talking about 22, 23, even 25 rands. You buy bread, you buy sugar, it's gone. Because simply it's little money, of course. But if you have the same $100, right, in hands of 1,000 people, it gives you 1,000 rands. And 1,000, it gives you 100,000 rands. And 100,000 rands is an investment capital. You see, from $100, which is nothing in one hands, you bring 1,000 hands together with the same 100 rands box. It's an important seed capital that can help to start a business somewhere in the location. So when you go to our communities, most of the people who own these alcohol company are not even our own people. They are, you find that people coming from Bangladesh, people coming from Pakistan, people coming from India, China are the ones to whom we are running every morning to get our bread, to get our sugar, to get, the alcohol and all these things. So asset-based community development implies that we can start at that, just putting our resources together and open a shop right next to the Indian shop in our community and tell our people that you need to go and buy to our community owned shop. And within 2 weeks, when the Indian doesn't have customers coming to his shop to buy, but is forced to pay rents, to pay taxes, within a few weeks he's going to close down his shop and find another can go and open the business. That's how we actually build a development that is from within, that is actually inside out, rather than development that is outside in, as it was proposed by the Westerners for the past 50 years or 60 years. Because what they did, or what they thought about development, was to come and build for you roads, build for you schools, build for you buildings, and they tell you now you are developed. But those are not the things that can develop a nation, because things that are built for you and they leave them for you, you may not even be able to maintain them. One example is in the Congo. Most of infrastructures that we have in the Congo that were left by colonialists are in decay if you go to Congo now, and we are unable to build new infrastructures. You will see a president coming there to rework on old infrastructures of colonial era, and then calls the media, the cameras are there to just do a show base that I'm working on what, bring something new. The roads are still the old ones. So we have been even unable to maintain these things, the buildings or whatever. Why? Because these are the things that have been made by other people for us. It's only something that you sacrifice for, something that you build, something that you have worked for, then you'll be able, you'll be able to protect and to defend, because you know how much you have worked to, get it established. But something that is offered for you, you may not be able to maintain it. So that's the bottom line. So community-based asset-based community development is the concept that is being discussed currently, which is fundamentally aligned with Pan-Africanism. For one reason, is because where we came from as a people, as human beings, we came from from a space where it was difficult to survive. The science and all the proofs show that the modern human being is born in Africa, right? In area that we call today Uganda, Congo, all that part of the continent. And immediately, as soon as the man and the woman were born there, they found themselves facing danger of all these wild animals, weather that was very unfamiliar, and all these conditions that people had to get to learn, to understand, to get familiar with. But the most danger that we had to face was wild animals that were destroying people. What saved us, what protected us, was that we learned quickly how to form community and to defend ourselves, to protect ourselves against that that danger of the time. And not just defend and protecting ourselves against those wild animals, we even learned how to master them, how to control them, how to dominate them, how even to domesticate some of them. You see, because we must understand, dogs, chickens, all these things were not domestic animals. You know, we had to learn how to domesticate them, to bring them from forest into our houses. You see, so that is the power of community. When we form community, we are able to do a lot of things. It is the same even today. The danger that we are facing today, the challenges that we are facing today in Africa can only be resolved if we are able to sit down and begin to organize ourselves in community structures. Because what is dominating our mind today is the culture of individualism, and ego is too much in our minds simply because we have been damaged by colonial system. You see, when you are living or evolving in a system that dehumanizes you, that reduces you to nothing and oppress you individually, you want to try to get out of that system. You see, especially when the masters of that system want to reward one of you who behaves correctly, one of you who works harder than others in terms of picking up the cottons, one of you who works harder than others in terms of accusing others who want to revolt. So that system puts in your mind that you need to survive by yourself. You need to look after your own interests. You need to behave correctly so that the master can reward you. Remember, during the slavery period, there used to be a system whereby the slave masters will release one slave once a year. And that will be a slave who has qualified as a good slave, who has been accusing others, who have been working hard. So there was kind of competition. And that is the same thing even during colonialism. And it is this very same thing even now. There's too much competition, even among our countries. You see the leaders in Africa today, it's like they're trying to do competition among themselves. In Rwanda, the leader want to be the best leader. They want to make Rwanda a best country that is acknowledged at international level, at the expense of the rest of the countries. The leaders in Burundi or Uganda want to do the same thing, want to make Uganda the best country. And so this competition just makes it difficult even for the unity that we're talking about, because when we come together to say, let us unite, we're still coming up with the same mentality of colonialist, of domination, of trickery and domination, of what can I do to take advantage over this country and its resources so that my country can flourish more. Yet we forget that the danger that we are facing doesn't discriminate between who is a Zimbabwean, who is a Congolese, who is a Chinese. It's here to decimate, to destroy all of us, and to take control over our resources, right? So it's only through community-based, asset-based community development that we are able to change our communities, our environment, and to design what will be the blueprint for the new Africa that we are busy creating, I guess. So that is actually the essence of asset-based community development. Look, I'm always giving this example. In 2016, the military spending in Africa was 46 billion US dollars. At that time, Russia was at 60 billion US dollars. Not too much difference. But when you look at the military power of Russia and the military power of Africa, there's no comparison. Africa is nowhere to be found. Even with 46 billion US dollars today must be more than that, simply because this money is spent individually to create a comfort zone for the leaders so that they can drive in armored vehicles, have mercenaries protecting them, and another portion of the money going through corruption, looting, all those kind of stuff. even though we don't have a history of war in Africa. We don't have history of Zimbabwe fighting savagery, Zambia to destroy the Zambians, or Angola trying to fight to destroy Congo. Because one thing is that when Europeans, for example, even though they have European Union, but France still want to have its weaponry strengthened, its military strengthened. Germany want to do the same. It's because these people have a history of war of destruction and they have a history of genocide among themselves. They fought a lot. So their history justifies the fact that individually they want to build their armies. But in Africa, we don't have that history. So we take the little money that we have to go and buy rotten weapons from France, from America, to come and to equip ourselves more, preparing for what? Do you think that one day Botswana can just begin to attack South Africa to destroy it? No, but why do we individually want to buy all these weapons that the Westerners are selling us, are marketing to us? Instead, if we take this 46 billion that we had, or that we still have, to build a continental army, a continental defense system, it is enough to give to Africa a strong voice and a strong position within the concept of nation, so that Africa can speak knowing that it's got a backbone to defend and to protect itself. Because I'm always telling people that even though we're talking about development and economic development, especially when we talk about African continental free trade, is good. So do you imagine that if through the African continental free trade we are able to make billions or trillions of dollars out of it, the Western will leave us alone? No, they will attack us, because it is like a person who goes to the markets or to the dealership and buys a car and park the car on the streets because it doesn't have a house that is got garage to park his car. So he buys that car, he parks it on the road, and the thief will come at night and steal the car. So we want to have a strong economy, but we don't have the means to defend and protect that economy. Therefore, it is almost like we are building that economy for the enemy, for the oppressors of Africa to come and steal it. And it has already happened in Libya. Muammar Gaddafi had lots of money. He by himself donated 300 billion US dollars for the projects of, I think 300 billion or million, if I'm not mistaken. It was kind of billion for the projects of Africans, the first satellites that Africa had for communication, because before we used to pay France to just communicate. So he donated out of 400 billion that was required. He donated 300 of himself. He had another huge portion of money dedicated to the African monetary fund system that he wanted to build, but he didn't have the means to defend and to protect himself. And when the enemies moved into him, you know what happened? They stole his money. Barack Obama stole his money, right? And Libya is today destroyed, is today into ruins. So for me, that was just to say that if we even want to build the economy, we need to build the strength first. And in order to build the strength, we need to come together and do it in the context of asset-based community development. It's anything that we want to have businesses. This mindset of, no, I'm going to have my own businesses. It's Western mindset. It doesn't work today. Even when you look at all the banking system, they are connected. They are working together. All the banks are linked, working together in solidarity. All the major corporations are working together in solidarity. Yet they have the power, but they still want to be united, organized, and working in community. But it's only us poor people who don't see the essence of community-based structures, of community and solidarity and working together. And that is why we continue to suffer and we continue to be oppressed. So asset-based community development, in a nutshell, is learning how to utilize the little resources that we have collectively in order to build institutions that can speak for all of us as a community. ACUP is kind of that, because that's what we have been pushing since day one. As I said, asset-based community development is in line, in connection with ideas of Pan-Africanism. Because when we talk about Pan-Africanism, we see the unification of African people globally for the total liberation of Africa, through scientific means. So let me pause here and just give us with the question that we can maybe discuss now in our open discussion. The question is, this is what asset-based community development means. What is your take about it? Do you think it's really fits to help us acquire development or progress or whatever that we want from now on? Or do you think there's something else, there's other methods that Africans need to come up with in order to achieve the total liberation and emancipation that we want or that we need as African people? I pose that. Thank you very much. Give the mic back to King Fanlo.
Wow, thank you so much, King Kabala, the true son of the soil. I'm sure Patrice Lumumba is proud to know that a son like you representing the nation that he fought for and he died for, because he's one of our heroes when we talk about Pan-Africanism. All of the fathers, you mentioned even Gaddafi, you mentioned these people, we often refer to Kwame. All of these leaders, what did they have in common? They wanted the assets, which is the land and all the natural resources of this continent, to first benefit their people before they benefit the Western powers. Now, that was the heart of what Gaddafi was about, Patrice Lumumba was about, Kwame Nkrumah was about, Steve Biko was about, Chris Hani was about, and Mugabe was about, John Makunguba was about. These are the heroes whose blood today is in the ground because they threatened, creating an Africa that is self-sufficient, that is sovereign, that depends on itself. And I think this is a good conversation. I am interested in hearing the various views. So as per usual, if you'd like to comment on the discussion, just open your mic. I will identify you, and then the floor will be given to you. So the floor is open to contribute asset-based community development in Africa that has its own assets, that does not depend on foreign IPs, intellectual properties, that builds its own system and produce its own food, its own industries, its own brand for everything we need: our medicine, our clothes, our entertainment, our music, our arts, our weapons, our military, 100%, so that we never depend on Western technologies and ideologies, or banking even. Have our own banks, have our own reserve banks. What do asset-based community development mean to all of us? So the floor is open. Let's hear. King Coffee.
Thank you so much, King Fanilo, for giving me the mic. King Kabala, thank you so much for your presentation. It was brilliant and very precise. In fact, it is deep, really, really deep. Coming from the historical background of African community to where we find ourselves now, you have elaborated very, very well. Personally, I think that to answer your question, first of all, that the community-based asset is the only way out for us in the world where it is always about power, and there is need for people with different skills, different talents, different assets come together to put the assets together, and that is what organization is really about. One other aspect of what we need to know and what we need to consider as Africans is to corporate, is to have a central point that unites us. Because we cannot let ourselves be fooled the other ways that come with it. For instance, when we talk about community, what do we still have in common as African at this point in time, where it's always about everybody for themselves and then God for all? Or we have a belief system that talks about salvation being individual. All these things are components of our existence that we need to consider when we talk about community. We need to find a central point, being it our belief, our economical system, our scientific system, our social aspect, way of living. I remember way back, I can walk through my neighbor's house and get to the next house. But now everybody is building fence with electrical wires. So we need to look at the social aspect, the belief system, and then the economical system, which is capitalism. Everybody wants to grab what is more. So for me, I think there is need for us to get a central point where people can all converge to and know that, oh, okay, yeah, we are all putting in this pot, because at the end of the day, anytime there is lack, we can get it from there. And we have to be sure that our brothers has our back, instead of we being scared of being stabbed by our brothers at the back. So for me, I think we have ACUP, who is offering an alternative, giving us a vision that we can all convert to wherever we find ourselves is an alternative. There might be other alternatives out there, but for me, I think the central point is key here, so that we all converge to it. Whatever we do, we all have it in mind that this is where we are heading to. It's gonna be like a compass to us. We are all converging at one point. So this is my contribution at this point. Maybe I might come later in again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, King Coffee. Your contribution, every single contribution is loved on this platform. The way you speak, you just open your mic because you can't lift your hand. When you open your mic, you indicate to me that you would like to jump in on the floor, and I will acknowledge you. So that's how it is. The floor is open. All the ideas are welcome. King Arnold.
Thank you, King Kavala, for such a lovely presentation. I just want to add to one of the matter that you have outlined, or you've mentioned, liquor. The other one, which I don't know how to tackle it, but I need you to figure it out in the sense of the following. Soccer, to be where it is, especially Britain, Spain, Portugal, Dutch, if you can trace it thoroughly, most of those countries, they accumulated much money during slavery. Actually, that is the slavery money. Now, at the moment, is one of the matter that is all over. One of the slogans that I remember that used to be mentioned, especially I'll speak about South Africa, that sport is the only thing that can unite people. Now, we have to be very, very straight to the point. It can only unite people physically. There's no other unity that can unite people spiritually, to know who they are, to define their enemies. And besides spirituality, there's none. Church, we've tried, Sports, we have tried. We have witnessed people are together immediately, one loses and so forth, all those type of things. The reason I'm mentioning soccer is that we have to come up with a methodology of saying nothing that will unite African people beside spirituality. Soccer, it does, but it only unites people physically, but it doesn't unite them spiritually. We can go into details and debate it, but we need to come up with a way of saying the enemies are going to be saying none that is going to unite Africans except sport, and we do not agree with that. Let me pack it here. I think there will be wise people who can present it or put it far, far better. I thank you.
This is wisdom, definitely. Every time King Arnold speak, we are just enjoying the wisdom that comes. He's simply saying, you know what? The thing that will unite our people should not be superficial. It should not just be when we drink beers and have bride together, but we have to connect at the spiritual level. And that's where the powerful connection lies. Because if the enemy tactics is divide and conquer, if that was the modus operandi for all of these years, that means by now, as sons and daughters of this continent, we have to wake up and understand that our unity right now, it's our asset. It's our number one asset. Because if we are united, even in spirit, then there's nothing that can stop us. There's nothing that will be a limitation, because as it stands, the one thing that is happening is that we've got our numbers are in our favor. 1 in 4 on a global arena of the 8 billion is an African. When you look at the professionals in industries driving the economies of the globe, it's our labor. 2 in 4 is an African. Now, if you realize that we already have been blessed with numbers, we've already been blessed with diversity of expertise, because we've got it. In fact, King Arnold says something significant. He says, if you look at Europe, they only show assets based on our labor, because it is us who dug that gold and shipped it there. It is us who dug those diamonds and that cobalt. It is our labor, our sons and daughters, our blood and sweat. Even when they carried us with slave trade, they had free labor when we planted their tobacco industries, when we planted sugar canes in the Caribbean, when we work in their industrialization, even in England. So the Bank of England itself was founded on slave trade. That's how they made their first money, by exploiting Africa. Now, if Europe, we're looking at it and we're saying, hey, they are rich, but it's only because they have not paid Africa for labor. They have not paid the fair price for minerals and produce of Africa. Our cocoa, our coffee is given and taken away by formulas that rob Africa, by injustices of currency fluctuations that they manipulate themselves and set the prices themselves. The capital outflow out of Africa is greater than the debt that Africa actually has right now. And perhaps the thing that will help us bring us back into consciousness to protect our borders is the unity, solidarity that Africa right now needs to awake and say, Africa first, and that is the solidarity we're looking for. I see King Adoma, your mic was open. The floor is still open. I saw your mic open, King Adoma, Kofi Adoma. Do you still want to take the platform? You can unmute.
Thank you. If I'm to say something about what the speaker said, and then our brother who just spoke before you took over, in his when the speaker was speaking in his initial speech, he made mention that now our enemies are telling us how to manage our environment, but in Amanakan, in Anakan, we have this symbol in our Dinkra symbols called the Sankofa. You know, in our culture, it is implicit that the environment is to be protected, and so when lands are closer to water bodies, we say those lands belongs to Nananum. And in Nananum, when you translate Nananum into English, you may say ancestors, you may say grandfathers, you may say grandparents, or you may say grandchildren. That is what Nananum means. Or you may say the spirits in Akan language. So in our philosophy, we believe that everyone dies. Everyone becomes an ancestor. And then everyone gives birth. And every individual, once you are giving birth, you must prepare for your children and grandchildren, what the whites call the intergenerational equity. And so in water resources, we use that philosophy in creating water resources. When it comes to forests, we say what the whites came and called it evil forest. We call it Nananumpo, that is forest reserve. We call it Nananumpo, that is forest reserve. In the sense that those places are reserved for generations to come. And because we were using herbs in medicine, it is believed that when such places are reserved, at the time that you find certain species difficult, when it's Hamatan, at those places it's easy to get certain herbs in treating certain kind of diseases. So we've been having this form of intergenerational equity, if we may say it per the white man's language. But fast forward, those who went to school at pre-colonial, para-colonial Africa, those who went to school and then changed their name. You know, in Ghana, we have a tribe called Ewe. They have a traditional name called Djibouti. And Djibouti translates into English called patience. So if you meet so many Ghanaians who are called patience, it's a traditional name called Djibouti. And there are those who went to school and with inferiority complex thought that, okay, they have to change their name to English language. Some who are called Blankson change their name into, some who are called Blankson, the original name is Kuntu. So these persons are black persons with white mentality who are reoriented. They are oriented in a way that anything African is bad. And so today, these persons are occupying political office. They are heads of families. They are occupying chieftaincy institutions. And they sell water lands which are closer to water bodies. And they think that with technology, they can fill those places up and put up structures there. They think that, okay, destroying the forest reserve to acquire gold or diamond to make easy money is quite okay. And it is happening in Ghana. I don't know if you are taking a closer look at what is happening in Ghana. In Ghana, they have a local term called galamsey. And this galamsey is meant to be illegal mining. But we have Americans who have taken over most of the gold reserves in Ahafo. They are mining. And Newmont have plant sites. Newmont, this American company, has 100% share. 100%. The people of Ahafo, nor the government of Ghana, has, neither the people of Ahafo nor the government of Ghana is having a 1% share in the Newmont Ahafo plant. Government only have 13% share in Newmont operations in Achim, and that has lower gold deposits. So it's like we are giving everything away. We are still signed on to colonial, should I say trade agreement? Colonial mining agreements. That's what we are hooked onto. But if we are to go back to what our ancestors practiced, what we call Sankofa, we will know that what is termed cooperative is part of the African life. As we speak, we are trying to form a group as a youth, how to put resources together, how to help ourselves, and then liberate ourselves economically. And I think what we need to do as Africans is to educate ourselves very well on cooperative, because the educational systems in most parts of Africa is extremely capitalist, which is anti-progressive, because you can't use the same route that America or France or Britain use in developing. You can't use those theory, because Ghana is not going to colonize Nigeria to rob Nigeria's resources to develop. All these countries rob resources from other parts of the world. As we speak, US have territories in East Asia, but South Africa is not having a territory in West Africa, and neither is it having a territory in the US. So it tells us that the basic principle that they are teaching us in books, their theories, are not realistic. So we have to put our let me use the proper word. We have to put our acts together and then think fast, act fast. I learned that South Africa is having more something of a cooperative, that is local persons putting their resources together to form something more like a capital, a finance thing, something like a stock. I'm forgetting the right name. If anyone can help me, but I think it's one of the ways to go. And then, as the speaker put it, we need to occupy some spaces, and we need to consolidate our gains. As let me end here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, King Adoma. So what you are referring to is cooperatives. So we have a cooperative bank in South Africa. It's the first license of having your own bank, where all the members, by the way, it's open. Every person who bank to this bank can be a shareholder. So people are banking in their own bank. So that's number one. And then number two, this bank can finance young people, entrepreneurs, brands, so that we give you working capital, we give you initial capital, and we create a market for you, so that you have a place to sell your product. But we also mobilize global expertise, so that we assist your brand to grow from spaza shop operation, or backyard operation, or garage operation, into a factory operation that can supply Africa and our diaspora in all the 195 jurisdictions. So that is the vision. So yes, you have to own your finance industry. You have to have your own bank. You have to print your own money against your own land and assets, or against your own cattle, against your own gold and diamonds. That is actually what we should be doing. and we should reject foreign currency. We should reject dollar, euro, and pound, because they are based on nothing. They have no assets. They just print the money. But Africa, we have the land, we have the gold, so we can print our own currency on our own assets. So that is the concept there. The floor is still open. Thank you so much, King Adoma. Yes, I suppose cooperative, the term cooperative refers to the unity, the need to recognize unity as an asset, because cooperatives is a type of business that says everybody who works in this company is a shareholder. Everybody who works in this, so there's no slave here, there's no slave trade. Somebody said it right. Africa cannot do it the way the West has done it, because the Western wealth is based on theft, stealing, killing, and destroying. That's why we're recognizing today that officially West is our Africa's enemy, because they have only taken, killed, and destroyed our knowledge, our artifacts, our gold, our diamond, our labor. Everything they're taking, they want for paying nothing for it. No fair prices, no fair price even for our labor. An African doctor in Australia is robbed of his salaries. An African doctor in Africa is robbed of his salary, because even if a European doctor comes here on the soil of Africa, he's still paid more. So that means the evaluation in the eyes of the West, the very reason they said, King Kabbalah said it, we are developed nations. So that means the developed nations have been developed at the back of exploitation of the developing nation or the underdeveloped world. And I think that is why we celebrate BRICS, because BRICS says, we are all equal around the table on the global arena. So let's treat each other with dignity. Let's recognize each other that we are partners, we are equal. Let's share, let's trade fairly. Let's all set our own prices. Let's create our own reserve currency. Let's create our own alternative. Because G7 and the Northern Hemisphere has been devastating the whole earth with their destruction or economics. Even in the environmental, global warming, it's thanks to them today. World War I, World War II, World War III, it's thanks to them today. COVID-19, it's thanks to them today. So all of these things is theirs, is their doing. Nuclear weapons and bombs, it's their doing. Bioweapons is their doing. So Africa has no party to it. So we cannot do it in the same premise as the West has done it, because it has destroyed the environment and caused global warming. So Africa has to do it differently. And I had discussion saying, we need to go back to how our ancestors did it. They were one with the environment. King Kabbalah says, we did not desecrate the trees and the forestry and the waters and the fish and the antelopes. We were mindful of the population and the grazing. And that's why we were moving around. We didn't put any fences so that we don't overgraze. Those were the things, being one with nature. All natives have been like that. That's the culture of Ubuntu, solidarity. Yes, the floor is still open. Kings, you just open your mic and you go for it. So King Kofi, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Still talking on,
Okay, I think
still
Sorry,
touching on
King Adoma.
the finance. Yeah.
Okay,
this
so,
advanced
okay, you
speaking.
can finalize and then King Kofi will come
Still,
after you then.
okay. Still talking on the finance thing. You know, there is an attack on finance institutions in Africa, and we seem to give a blind eye to it. Just recently in Ghana, 2017, 2018, 2019, government engages in a so-called banking sector cleanup. And you know what they did? Attacked indigenous finance institutions. Initially, our finance market was dominated by European companies. And when our finance market was our finances were getting stable, they move out. Then it distorts our economy. When we struggle to get it back to shape, they come, set up, and then destabilize. Fast forward, we got some companies like GM Bank, Unibank, UT Bank, and so many savings and loans companies. This government initiates a program, increases the minimum capital requirement for banks and savings and loans. By the time we realize, most of the companies are gone. Ironically, these companies, these indigenous finance companies, were loaning to the states instead of the government of Ghana going outside, borrow in dollar terms to invest in our economy and then pay back in dollars, which always affected our economy. Typical example, Ghana Cocoa Board in Ghana buys cocoa from Ghanaian farmers. Cocoa Board pays in cedis. It doesn't pay in dollars. Why should Cocoa Board go on international market, go borrow in dollar terms to come and buy cocoa from cocoa farmers? And then when it's due to pay back the so-called loan, we are paying back in dollars. So always our economies are being affected. Someone may say the economic hitman will say economic machine, taking resources from our economy to some so-called developed economies. And then, aside attacking these commercial banks, now there is a new regulation which is in the offing that is coming to regulate cooperative institutions, cooperative financial institutions. Initially, it was so flexible, and when government collapsed the traditional banking sector, our indigenous investors move into the cooperative credit unions. And now there are strict laws. The laws are not even passed by Parliament, but the cooperative department is using those laws to regulate. And it discourages anyone going into such endeavor. But as we speak, it's one of the tools that we can use in liberating ourselves economically. So I don't know if that same attack is in other African economies, and if it's there, or if it is now wearing its head, I would suggest that we organize and face that. We organize in getting our finance institutions set up as early as possible, so that when those draconian laws are being implemented, it may not affect our cause. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, King Kobiao.
Thank you, kings and queens. Thank you, moderator, for the day. And I want to applaud Papa Kofi Adoma for his presentation. In actual fact, sorry to be late to this conference. I picked two things from his outputs, and those are the Sankofa issue and the cooperative. The Sankofa, as he rightly explained it in English, is go back to your ancestral roots. That's the meaning. It's a Twi language in Ghana. In every Navajo, Togwi, Ope, Kasinono. So I think there's the need for us, where we have reached now. Africa is at the crossroad, and the indigenous knowledge system of Africa. I think the Eurocentric strategy has made us to throw overboard our indigenous knowledge system, which is our values. And it behoves on us as a Pan-Africanists to fight tooth and nail to see that we recognize our indigenous knowledge systems. As he made us to know, when we were a child, there are some forest reserves, and you can't go in because they will tell you, if you go there, so and so will happen on you, or this is the punishment. So there is a respect for nature during our childhood time. And now you could see the way we are depleting nature, which is having devastating effect on us. Always we are shouting climate change, and the Eurocentric group of people, they are using us to destroy our own vegetation, and after they'll bring a policy, climate change action, and a whole lot of things. So the independence of the mind as Africans, we need to work it out, because the mindset we have been swayed in a way that our values, our gift of nature, have been thrown to the dogs, which shouldn't happen, because it's derailing our development and progress as a continent or as a bloc. So it is a serious issue of Sankofa, or going back to the ancestral roots and the knowledge system, the indigenous knowledge systems of Africa need to be imbibed. It's very important. And when you talk of Ubuntu, it's a way of a cooperative lifestyle of Africans, togetherness from the mind, the heart, and any action. That time, I always say it, that when we were children, we eat together in one bowl, and that exhibits love to one another with a clear conscience. But now, because of Eurocentric system of life, we blindly imitate the imperialists and the values that will create the purity, the peace, the love, the happiness, and the bliss among we Africans, so that cohesion and harmony will prevail. And how freely we can share knowledge, the indigenous knowledge, for our progress and development is lacking. So African Continental Unity Party, we have a tedious job to do. And it's not just about talk show, but we have to practicalize it, because if we didn't take the necessary steps at this time, this 21st century, this generation, if we didn't get an answer to the struggle, the generations, our children and unborn children, will put accusing figures to us. So my humble appeal is, I think we have to practicalize our approach to this fight. We must know that the Westerners, or the enemies, the imperialists, are monitoring us. We must be aware that they are monitoring us, and they are finding any way to short our effort. So we have to be serious in this fight. It's very important, because we have to achieve a result before we die. So this is my plea for all of us, that we need to take this fight very serious and find a solution, a sustainable solution to our plight. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you so much, King Koveya. Powerful wisdom right here. King Kabbalah, because of time, I'm going to throw back at you. Just to recap and wrap it up for us, with all of the contributions to all the participants, thank you so much. And thank you so much, King Kabbalah, for your presentation as well. Just back to you, so we summarize and close.
Thank you very much, King Fanelo, and thank you very much to everybody, King Arnold, King Kofi, Adoma, and King Kovia. Yes, your contributions have well been noted. And if, in fact, I mean, it's time that we need to move now to some kind of a practical organizations where we then discuss what can we do economically, and then we come together, we form enterprises based on cooperatives, structure. I think the word that King Kofi was looking for was a Stockville, which is mostly used here in South Africa, whereby people chip in money, but unfortunately many people don't utilize it. People chip in money for you and you take it to go buy clothes and stuff like that. If that can be channeled into a sense of a banking system of investment, it can be a powerful tool that can really unlock a lot of opportunities for African here in South Africa and everywhere else. So let us think through and try to form organizations that will bring communities together so that we can do things that other people have always been pretending to do for us. I mean, that's the only way to do for ourselves what other people pretend to do for us. And in order to do that perfectly is to organize ourselves in community structures and begin to utilize the little resources that we have in form of capital, form of investment capital for our own solutions. So thank you very much for your time, and see you next week for another edition again. Another fruitful discussion that we'll have next week. For now, I say peace and love, freedom and decolonization to all African people, those at home, those abroad, and those in the future. Have a good night. Peace and love. Bye-bye.